my bloods were so out of range, even the conventional range flagged me and said, everything's wrong. You are a capitulating nightmare. Go and seek help. I showed it to my mentor and he was like, what is going on? I was like, mate, I don't know. Decentralized healthcare is me saying to you, I'll be like, right, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to make you the CEO of your own health.
Everyone thinks it's harder, as everything is harder in the beginning, but once it becomes your lifestyle, once it becomes your norm, a lot of that hard becomes easy.
Because no one is coming to save me.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Holistic Mastery Podcast. Today, I'm joined by a special guest, Mark Dini. Mark is a functional health and optimization coach who specializes in functional lab testing, peptide therapy, quantum biology, and he's healed himself of an autoimmune condition, which we will get into in a bit. Mark, welcome on. Thanks for coming on, brother.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for having me. This is exciting. Since we've met, I've been looking forward to reaching that pinnacle point where I was good enough to come onto your podcast.
Always, bro.
And it's happened. I've arrived. This is it. This is perfect for me. I'm over the moon. So thank you for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah, great to have you, bro. Yeah, because it's like all our conversations are almost like podcast worthy, right? I feel like they're worth to be recorded and 100%. Valuable to listen back to, but just having a dedicated session is obviously a bit different. So, yeah, is there anything else you feel like would be worth adding in there for people who may not be familiar with you?
Yeah, I guess. So I'm dubbed the Bionic Man, right? Because if it was down to Western medicine, I wouldn't be here, in the sense of I wouldn't be doing what I do. Like, I've had 7 surgeries. They wanted to put a metal rod in my spine when I was 24 because they said I wouldn't be able to walk by the time that I was 30. But yet I can still Olympic lift and do gymnastics and go running and all those types of things. And end of 2022 with the autoimmune, they said to me that it's unhealable and they wanted to cut out my intestines, and I still have my intestines. So I am the defiant one. I am the one where I make a way or I find a way. And I hope with all of that encapsulated, it brings hope to anybody that's listening that thinks that maybe there's not an answer. Again, find a way or make a way. There is always an option there. You just have to be hard. You have to look hard enough to find it.
I love that, bro. I love that. So I kind of like to go back to the beginning with all my guests. You know, Where did you grow up? How did it all begin?
Right. Okay. So I was born in Northwood Park, which is a little part of a town called Harrow. Most people know Harrow because you've got the Harrow Boys School. It's part of the Middlesex Borough. So Harrow, Watford, those kind of areas in London, they're kind of well known in North London. So I'm from Harrow originally. And growing up, I was not a very well child. So when I was 9 weeks old, my mum took me to get checked out because I just would not stop crying. And the doctor that she took me to said, oh, he's got an ear infection. Thankfully, my mum called bullshit on that and got a second opinion. And they found out I actually had meningococcal septicemia, which is meningitis B. It's the worst form of meningitis, which affects the lining of the brain. From that moment on, I was in ICU, almost died quite a few times because of that. And obviously got chucked a ton of antibiotics. So from 9 weeks old, I wasn't in a very good immunological state because they basically wiped my biome from the moment that I was born. And from that moment, I had every illness you could possibly think of for a child. So whooping cough, pneumonia, measles, mumps, chest infections. I lost vision, I lost hearing, everything. So my hero's journey from Joseph Campbell, for anybody that knows the hero's journey, my hero's journey started at 9 weeks old. And from that moment all the way through my life, there have been things that have happened which would test a lot of people. So that's where the Bionic Man comes in. After having 7 surgeries, both shoulders rebuilt, 4 surgeries on my knee, surgery on my elbow to have my elbow sorted out as well. Like, there's no reason why I should be able to be doing what I'm doing. So that's kind of a very, very, very long 43-year period into a very, very short space. But I was sickly for many years, even into my, I'd probably say my early 20s, probably about 24, 25. That's when I just kind of made that decision. I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like chronic chest infections, like lung infections, ear infections. I was like, I can't live like this anymore. And that's when my life took a little bit of a turn and I got very, very, very sick. That was the first time I got hit with an IBD flare back in 2011, but I didn't know that's what it was. And the doctors at the time were like, oh, it's just IBS. And I was like, that sounds more like BS to me. Let's knock off the I, because, you know, IBS doesn't actually exist. It's just a blanket term for many symptoms that doctors cannot understand or put a name to. And I lost 3 stone in 2 months. I couldn't eat anything. I couldn't drink anything. My job was very, very stressful. I worked for Apple at the time, and I was in the leadership and development department, and I trained a lot of their staff and a lot of their managers and area managers and regional directors. And so working 7 days a week, really long hours, it was hard, bruv. And that illness is what flipped it for me. At that moment, I was like, I need to heal myself. And so I stumbled into the alkaline approach of food, not realizing that you can't really change the alkalinity of your body, but just by switching to a more alkaline food-based diet, reduced inflammation. That's basically what it's done. I did that, started finding out about probiotics and the amazing recovery aspects of glutamine and all these other types of things, and healed myself and was able to eat food again and live life again. And then unfortunately at that moment, me and my ex-fiance split up. So I'd been with her like 10 and a half years. And so at that particular moment that I'd healed myself, I went back into another very stressful situation where I had to move my entire life at 31. Yeah, 31. I had to start again. So there I was at 31, living out of my dad's spare room, had one holdall bag. That was it. Everything else was piled up in the middle of my ex-fiance, well, our house, in the middle of the room. And I ended up having to put it in storage. And for almost 2 years, I lived out of my dad's spare room. So yeah, that should have knocked me, but it didn't. It just made me more determined. And believe it or not, I started a supplement company, or a supplement distribution company. And I was, I think, if not the first, but one of the first to get Quest bars into the UK, which was quite cool. So I met those guys very early on, which was kind of cool, and got into the whole like coconut oil and all that type of stuff very, very early back in 2012. Started going into nootropics, like had to really hunt for like paracetams and anaracetams and Noopept and stuff like that, because you just couldn't get it. So you'd have to go to like these dodgy forums to find somebody that knew a guy that had something in his like raincoat. So you know what I mean? I said, walk in, like, what do you want? So it was one of those situations. So yeah, dude, like my history is just, it's crazy. I've lived abroad. So I lived abroad for 5.5 years. Been in the music industry. So I had a record contract for 5 years. So I traveled around and toured and met many, many famous people, and just took copious amounts of drugs in the music industry. Like one of the craziest stories I've got on that, sorry, I'm talking off topic or everywhere, but one of the craziest stories I've got about that is we went to do an event in, where was it? Was it Birmingham or Hyde Park? One or the other. I forget where it was. And one of the women that's helping to manage the show, because there's like thousands of people, like I think it was like maybe 5,000 to 10,000 people watching. And we've arrived, me and my band, and she said to us all, she's like, so what do you want? And so I was like, sandwich, whatever. Like, wasn't very healthy back then. So I was like, yes, sandwich is fine. And she just looked at me. She went, a sandwich? I was like, yeah. And my mate, Dave, he's knocked me and he went, you're an idiot. I was like, why? He's like, that's not what she's asking. I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, I'll have a line of Coke. And I was like, wait, what? And she was like, okay, a line of Coke. I was like, I will have a bag of weed. She was like, bag of weed. I was like, and Rizzlers and tobacco. She's like, okay, shit you not. 20 minutes later, she rocks up and she's giving all of us what we need. And I was like, wow, that is nuts. So Yeah, music industry, supplying you drugs. Who knew? The rumors are true.
Heavily connected.
Yeah, man, random as hell. But anyway, that's a little bit of me, I guess.
Yeah. So what was the kind of transition like after that? Obviously, you were working at Apple,
Hmm.
music industry,
Yeah,
the separation. Where did things
yeah.
go kind of after that?
So when I was living at my dad's, I knew obviously I needed a job, and I wasn't working at Apple anymore. So I was like, right, what am I going to do? So I started getting back into the music again, started singing, started recording, going to like shoot like demo tracks basically. So when I was in the music industry and a writer or a producer wanted us to hear a track, they would get a demo artist to sing it and then ship it to the studio, and then we'd listen to it. So that's what I started to do. So that got me back into kind of doing that again. But it just wasn't enough money. So I eventually thought, right, well, I need to find a job. So I went and started managing an Italian restaurant. I was like, I've never done this before. So I managed a restaurant. I ended up having to learn how to obviously work the kitchen and be a sous chef and a chef. And I had to learn how to be a barista. So I went and became a certified barista. I then went and got my alcohol license so that I could manage the bar at the restaurant. And I think I've still got that license, which allows me to basically run a pub if I want to. I can be a landlord. I can put up a big tent on the middle of nowhere and have alcohol and people can party. Like I've got all the license to do that now, and it makes me a upstanding citizen of the community, apparently. So I worked there for a little bit, then left the Italian restaurant and went to Nando's and started managing at Nando's purely on the basis that I love Nando's. And I was like, well, I want to know how good this place is. Let's see if it's actually healthy. And genuinely, they are very healthy and very clean. But I didn't enjoy like cracking chickens at like 5 o'clock in the morning, prepping everything for my staff. Like even as a manager, you have to do that stuff. So I'm there with my hairnet on and my plastic sheets that you have to wear over you because they are really hot on cleanliness and hygiene. And you're there like cracking chickens' legs and stuff and breaking their backs and stuff. Not they're not alive. You know, it's not like I'm running around chasing chickens. They're all dead anyway. But you have to crack them so they can be spatchcocked and stuff like that. And after about 6 months of doing that, I was like, yeah, this isn't me. So I was like, well, what do I love to do? I was like, well, I love educating people. That's what I did at Apple. So I taught people how to basically be Apple. I taught them the Apple steps of service, how to sell, and all those other types of things. And I loved fitness. I've been into training since I was 13 years old. I've been at the gym since I was 13 years old. And I was like, right, well, I looked at being a personal trainer when I was 16. And at the time, I was like, there's like 5 in the whole world. It's not a thing that I want to do. It's not very successful. Idiot. Should have done it then. I revisited it at 31. So qualified as a personal trainer, quit my job. I was like, right, this is the first step of doing what I love for the rest of my life. And from 2012, end of 2011 to 2020, that is what I did. And for the final 7 years of that journey, I built a very, very successful personal training business. I serviced between 40 to 50 clients every single month. I had a waiting list for about 6 years. Not a 6-year long waiting list, but I mean, I had a waiting list every month for 6 years. I ended up becoming a CrossFit coach. I ended up competing in CrossFit. I ended up competing semi-professionally in Spartan races and stuff like that, and obstacle course races, and got very, very fit, very physically prepared for anything. Like I went and ran a marathon just because I could. I hadn't run further than like 5K because that's all you ever do in CrossFit. You don't really run that far. So I ended up running a marathon in like 3 hours and 20 minutes. I didn't even train for it. So it made me very fit. My business was very successful, but I worked 75 hours a week. Like I was at the gym 5:30, 5:45 every morning. I would finish coach, and I'd go from 5:30, 5:45 until about 1, 1:30. Then I would train for 2 hours. Then I would quickly go home, shower, eat, and be back at the gym within an hour. And I'd work there till 10. And I did that Monday to Saturday. And then Sunday was my whole day still physically writing programs, right? Not going online or doing anything like that. And Then COVID hit. Well, then lockdown hit. COVID is dubious. Lockdown was real. So then I was like, well, damn, I don't have a career anymore. I don't have a job anymore. What am I going to do? So for the first 3 months, I kind of thought, nah, I'll just enjoy the beautiful weather and hear the birds sing in the morning and read books and study, which is what I did. And that was nice. And then the money started running out. And I was like, well, probably should start doing something. And so I got into functional medicine. I was already biohacking anyway. So I already had red light panel, like 2018. I'd been using kind of black market peptides from 2017, because as everybody knows with CrossFit, it's literally shoulders, back and knees. So every day you wake up, you are like a 90-year-old man until you lubricate yourself and then you can move. But going up and down stairs, you could just hear my joints just going all the time. So BPC and TB500 was just a common occurrence. Like if I could have had that IV'd all day long, I'd have been fine. So I thought, right, well, maybe I should venture into something a little bit more alternative. And I've always been very woo-woo. Like I've always been spiritual. Like I've been a Reiki master. So that's another thing about me. So I was a Reiki master from the age of 24. I ran a very successful therapy business when I lived abroad for 3 years. So I was like, well, I'm quite woo. I was like, so maybe I should go into more of the alternative, holistic, homeopathy, naturopathy. And I was trying to find something that covered everything. And I was like, well, functional medicine looks pretty decent. Looked at the stepping stones to that. And as you know, you really, if you want to go into functional medicine and take the shortcut, you need to be a doctor. And I was like, crap, well, I'm not a doctor. That's 5 years of my life I don't want to be doing ER and all that stuff. So I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And then realized to do functional medicine without that took you about 6 years and probably cost you about 10 grand. And I was like, well, I'm not going to be doing that either. So I found an institute. At the time, it was called the Carter Institute. Now it's called the Institute of Health. And it just so happens that within that institute, and you know this institute, they teach you all of it. They teach you functional medicine. They teach you how to do functional blood reading. They teach you how to read tests like stool tests and oats and mycotoxin tests and stuff like that. They teach you all about hormones and diet and training and biomechanics and genes and genetics. And I was like, huh. At the time, it was like, I think it was like 7 grand. So I was like, all right, this could be the thing. So I signed up, and that was at the end of 2020. So I was one of the OGs, and met some amazing people, like genuinely, like to go from feeling, because I live on my own, so being very isolated. Like my parents didn't live near me at the time. So in lockdown, I saw no one. Like I didn't have anybody around me. So I was on my own the whole time, which I'm fine with, because, you know, as Anthony DeMello says, there's a difference between being alone and lonely. Lonely, you depend on others to make you feel a certain way. Alone, it means that you're comfortable in your own stillness, and I am. Like I've done all the dark night of the soul work. I've done all the trauma work. I'm very comfortable in my own space. But it was just nice to have this, right? So every week there was like 3 calls, blood work, business, like how to do Instagram marketing, all that stuff. And I was like, so 2 years of studying that. And it eventually brought me to the place where I was like, right, I've got an online business. I'm remote. How do I separate myself from everybody else? How do I find my uniqueness? How do I make that present to the world? And I was struggling to figure that out. And then unfortunately, or fortunately, depending how you want to look at things, I look at it as fortunately, the very last institute meetup that I went to, which was in Manchester, August of 2022, I started getting really ill. Like out of nowhere. Well, I say it was out of nowhere. It started out of nowhere, but there was a trigger from it. I didn't know what the trigger was at the time, but after now studying quantum biology for the past, what we're now August, so 7 months, I now know what it was. At the time, I didn't. And it was ulcerative colitis eventually that I figured that out. Well, I knew what it was. I knew it was IBD. I just didn't know whether it was Crohn's or colitis. And luckily at that time, one of my ex-clients' wives is one of the leading gastroenterologists in the UK. and she's head of she's one of the leaders of the board of the Gastroenterological Institute at St Mark's Hospital, which is the leading gastroenterological hospital in the UK. So I was like, dude, like, can you set me up with your wife? Not like that, but right. And he's like, yeah, cool. So I went to see her, and she diagnosed me in the November. So from August to November, I was just unable to eat food. Like, if I ate anything, within 5 minutes, I'm in the bathroom. And initially, it was just bowel movements, like normal bowel movements, just like all the time. And not to be graphic, you just get a lot of the time with like IBD or gastroenteritis or diverticulitis, you get a lot of mucus because the body's creating this as a inflammatory response, basically. And then it started happening with liquids. Like, I could have water and it would just be triggered and I'd be straight into the bathroom. And it went from being 3 times a day to 5 times a day to 7 times a day to 10 times a day to 15 times a day, 20 times a day in the middle of the night. It would wake me up at like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. And I was like, this is insane. By the time I got to the end of September, beginning of October, I was losing about 2 to 3 cups of blood a day. And I was like, yeah, this is serious now. So I got my bloods done. Now, I use a private blood company to get bloods done. The bloods got done. The owner of the company called me, and I know him well, really nice guy, but he called me specifically at this moment. And he went, mate, I've got your results. He's like, I need you to speak to my mate, Dave, who's a very well-known bodybuilding prep coach, but he's good at bloods. I was like, okay, cool. I was like, I'll show it to my coach as my mentor as well. So I showed it to my mentor, and he was like, fuck, like, what is going on? I was like, mate, I don't know. I was like, I don't know what it is. And he was like, it looks like it could be bacterial, it could be parasites. Like, I've never seen cortisol that jacked ever. He's like, it could be Cushing's. I was like, shit. Well, my auntie had that. I was like, okay, Cushing's disease isn't fun. So I spoke to the other guy, and he was like, Cushing's, neutrophils are sky high, lymphocytes are sky high, everything's breaking down, white blood cells through the roof. Like, out of 64 panel blood marker, I would say 50 were red. And that's in the normal range, not in the functional range. In the functional range, they were all red. You know what that means. The standard common range is like this wide. It's like 0 to 100, where the optimal range is like 5 to 10.
Yeah, so maybe you could quickly explain that for people, because I know a lot of people are not going to be familiar with it.
Of course. So the conventional range, when it comes to doctors, GPs, consultants, specialists, it doesn't matter what country you are in, the average range comes from the same cohort. That cohort is who goes to see these people, doctors, GPs, consultants, specialists. These are sick people and old people. And then they take the average of that and say to you, average person, there you go. That's where you sit. Well, what separates us from the functional side then is in functional, or separates that from the functional side, is that functional says, well, you don't want to be the average of sick and old people if you're like looking for optimal health. So how about we find an optimal range? So if we again use, I don't know, let's use testosterone as an example. Average range, common like range for doctors and GPs, maybe 8. So I've recently had a guy come to me, done his bloods, testosterone's 8. 8. I have 70-year-olds with bloods, testosterone levels higher than that. I've had women who are almost as high as that, right? Enhanced women, let's be fair, but still, that's a very, very low test range. But in conventional ranges, they'd say, yeah, no, all's fine. And this is why everybody stop and think for this moment. You go to your doctor, you get your bloods done, you're feeling like crap, you don't know why, and they come back to you and say, everything's fine. And in your head, you're going, but it's not, though. It's really not. I am not supposed to feel this way. I'm not supposed to have these symptoms, but yet you're telling me everything's fine and to go away. That's why, because the ranges are so broad. So to put that into a context, mine, from my bloods back then, my bloods were so out of range, even the conventional range flagged me. and said, everything's wrong. You are a capitulating nightmare. Go and seek help. And so I did what I could from a functional perspective to get it in line. At the time, I was so sick and so ill, I couldn't leave my home at all. I couldn't go for a walk, nothing, because I had to be by a bathroom at any moment. I couldn't sleep. It was awful. So I eventually get to speak to my client's wife. I go and see her. I have a colonoscopy, cleared me of cancer, but then say, yeah, it's ulcerative colitis and it's quite bad. It's in the descending colon, which is where colitis is. And there's no polyps or anything like that. Everything's fine, but you're going to have to take this medicine, and then that will stop working. And when that stops working, you have to go on biologics, which is basically like chemo for the immune system. And when they stop working, we'll cut out your intestine. I was like, well, that's a shit prognosis. It's like, I don't like the sound of that. And there's nothing else you can do. No, nothing. And I was like, right. Okay. Time to call in that part of me, which is the Harvey Keitel character from Pulp Fiction, the cleaner, the people that they call when stuff goes wrong and you need someone to fix it, who's got unconventional ways of thinking. That's what I did. So I was like, right, what? And I always do this with people. I don't say it. This is how I think. One of my favorite people to listen to when it comes to problem solving is Tim Ferriss. He asks amazing questions, right? And a problem is a question you haven't yet answered to a level that fulfills you, right? So I'm going to say that again. A question is a problem you haven't yet answered to a level that fulfills you. So what does that mean? It means you have to ask better questions. So most people ask, what am I doing, or what do I need to be doing to solve this problem? I asked a completely different question. I asked, what am I not doing, or what am I not seeing? When you ask a different question like that, that's called opportunity cost, right? So you've got A and B. Everybody focuses on A. What happens if I don't do A? Okay, well, the better question would be, what if you don't do B? You've chosen A, but what happens if you don't do B? What's the cost of that? So I was like, so what am I not doing? And I was like, peptides. It's like, bloody peptides. I was like, I haven't tried peptides. So I went on a 3-month journey of trialing different peptides in different orders, different dosages to see what stuck. Some made it 1,000,000 times worse. Some made it work, but it only lasted a couple of weeks. And then I stumbled across a blend, which I've revealed to you already, which I've dubbed my Deadpool stack. Everybody knows, I guess, the Wolverine stack, which is TB500 and BPC 157, because it helps your body heal. Well, as we're all going to find out, I guess, in this new Deadpool Wolverine film, Wolverine can regenerate, but Wolverine can heal, but Deadpool can't die. That's true regeneration, right? So he is literally a salamander. So I was like, this is my Deadpool stack. And this is now what I give to all my IBD patients or any autoimmune patient, because it helps to quell what's going on. It changes signaling, which is important, because we have to remember there is no dis-ease. There is no sickness. There is just your body trying to tell you that something is wrong. And you have to hear that message loud and clear. And when you treat it as a symptom, you are constantly trying to solve that one problem, which comes to the old adage, doctor, it hurts when I do this. Well, then don't do it then. Doesn't help, right? So when you look at it from, as you know, a root cause, you end up treating a system, not a symptom. And that's what the peptides allowed me to do. They allowed me to treat the system and calm it down and eventually turn off the signals that were causing the problem. Because whenever you're in a position like I was in, where there's a lot happening, where there's so many disparate symptomologies going on, it's like walking into your house and flicking the light switch on and the garage door opens. Or the switch works and the garage door works, but it's the wrong bloody signal. So you have to fix that. And it becomes about signal over noise. When there's a lot of distress in the body or chaos, inflammation, there's noise. It's like having 50 screens in front of you, all showing a different channel. And then me saying to you, right, Anush, I want you to focus on TV number 20, and I want you to tell me what they're saying. You're going to be like, not even if you gave me 10 million, would I be able to do that, because I can't hear it. There's too much noise. That's the thing. There's too much noise in the system. The peptides turned the noise down and then eventually turned off those signals, and it left me with the root cause. Once I found the root, I could address the root. Once I addressed the root, the body was happy and it calmed to a point where it was stable. I wouldn't say it was fully healed, but it was stable. That allowed me to do that to everybody that came to me with IBD or any other autoimmune. Then I stumbled across the quantum biology side of things, and that's been the ultimate game changer when it comes to taking something which was stable to being fully healed. Like, there's no remnants of anything at all. And not just in me, but in previous clients that were stable, that haven't worked with me for like 6 months, 7 months. I've now gone back to them and said to them, I have found this out. Do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, and keep doing it. Just don't ever stop doing it. And then I get messages back being like, I haven't felt like this before. I've never felt like this. I feel amazing. I look amazing. I feel confident. I have no this, I have no that. Da, 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 da. And that was the final piece. Very, very long story short.
Yeah. So you touched on obviously the functional ranges. Maybe we can just cover a few other kind of foundational elements, obviously, for, as I'm realizing, a lot of people aren't familiar with functional medicine as much as we might assume it's common knowledge. So just for sake of understanding, obviously you're very good at explaining things in a way that's easily digestible and understandable. So
Thank you,
we touched on the functional ranges versus conventional ranges. Maybe we could just go over kind of basic, what is functional medicine? How would you kind of describe it? And then also like a root cause approach.
Cool. All right. Love this question. Okay. So if you type it into Google, what is functional medicine? Or you ask anybody that's in functional medicine, you are going to get a different answer depending on the experience, the journey, and the perception of the person that you are asking. But I love that, because anything that is alternative, functional, holistic, comes from a lineage dating way back before conventional medicine, before the petroleum-based Western medicine came into play. And it was never called functional, it was never called alternative, it was never called holistic, it was just called medicine. But then when Western medicine came in, it turned that into like woo-woo nonsense, and Western medicine took over. So how I describe functional medicine is I try not to label it, but obviously people want to put things into labels, which is fine. But it's offering people alternative options to reaching optimal health by any means necessary. What is available to you? Thinking that Western medicine loves absolutes, isolation. So we'll use the blood work as an example. You go and get your bloods done by your GP. And where me and you will do 64, 75, 100 marker blood panels, because that makes joining the dots a hell of a lot easier, because what gets measured gets managed. And the more information I have, the easier it is for me to find out the information, right? Think of it as like a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. Western medicine has the 4 corners and is asking you to figure it out. We're giving you half the pieces and saying to you, right, now what do you see, right? Plus, we ask the patient more about themselves because we've got more time. I'm not going to be disrespectful to Western medicine and doctors at all. In the UK, they get on average 9 minutes per client or per patient. Well, Jesus Christ, dude, I couldn't figure out what's wrong with anybody in 9 minutes unless they literally put a blood panel in front of me and I didn't speak to them. I was like, right, so this and this, right? But what happens in Western medicine is they'll do the bloods and everything is very unconnected. You'll have like thyroid. We're going to measure your thyroid. We're going to measure your hormones. We're going to measure your lipids, and we're going to get your complete blood count done. All right, cool. Sounds awesome. It sounds like there's a lot going to be there. All right, thyroid. We've got TSH, and just TSH. Right. And you said you're going to do lipids. Yeah, we've got cholesterol. What about LDL, HDL? Oh, we've got LDL. Triglycerides? No. Cholesterol, HDL ratio? No. VLDL? No. Okay. And you said we're going to do a hormone panel. Yeah, we've got testosterone. An SHBG. Free test? No. Cortisol? No. Estrogen? No. Progesterone? No. Right. So we've got like 4 markers. Yeah. Oh, and just randomly, we've got iron. That seems to be a nice one that they love. And your iron's low. So that means you've got low iron. Okay. And so how do all these disparate markers connect with each other? Oh, they don't. Oh, they don't. So everything in the body is a completely separate entity to itself. Nothing interdigitates. Nothing connects. No. That's like saying the wind isn't the thing that moves the leaves in the trees. Well, of course it bloody is, because it's cause and effect, right? There is an action of the wind and a blow through the leaves, which makes them move. Okay. Functional medicine, on the other hand, will say, right, nothing in the universe, in the entire universe, is isolated or an absolute singularity all on its own. The second there's an up, there's a down. The second there's a left, there's a right. To be happy, you need to know sadness. For you to be healthy or experience health, you have to have had sickness. For you to appreciate beauty, you need to have seen ugliness. For there to be peace, there has to be war. That is what this whole universal life is about. This life on this planet particularly. It's that balance, right? Constant balance. Everything is in balance. If you look in nature, there's not too many lions and not enough gazelle. There's always a balance. There has to be. And nature finds that way to keep things balanced. That is what functional medicine does, comparative to conventional medicine. I wouldn't look at low iron and be like, it's low iron. Don't eat enough red meat. If it was that simple, I'd love it. But it isn't, as you know. If you've got high iron, you've got hemochromatosis. Not necessarily. Could be something bacterial going on. Could be some just chronic inflammation. Could be blue light exposure. Could be vitamin D. Could be low. This is backing up cholesterol because you need cholesterol to turn non-active vitamin D into vitamin D. Could be thyroid. You need cholesterol to make thyroid hormones. There are so many things, but that is what separates functional medicine from Western medicine, is the fact that we'll give them a blueprint to answer. That's a subjective data. How do you feel? In-depth form. Blood work, in-depth analysis. Join the two together. Probabilities of dysfunction. This is the percentage chance of the probability of dysfunction. The more I see this, the more probability there is. Because again, nothing's an absolute. I'd never say to somebody, you 100% have low stomach acid. I don't know that. But there's a probability of about 75%. Well, that's favorable. So let's treat it as such. And if it improves, if it doesn't, we'll go a different route. Functional medicine is like getting to a crossroads and having multiple ways to choose. And one direction isn't the end of the world. You can come back and go down the other route, and then come back and go down the other route. You can do this as many times as you want. Well, Western medicine, once you're in that silo, you're locked. And now there's no escape. Unless you come and find somebody like me or you that says, well, there is another way. And that's purely based on the fact that we're not governed by the same red tape. We have the opportunity to explore other alternatives because we're not governed by legality in that same way. We are still governed by legalities, of course. I can't say to somebody, right, okay, here's some cyanide, just, daily dose, microdose that every single day. You can't do stupid shit, but you're not governed by that same, I can't move because if I do, I'll be struck off. I can't recommend to you to go and take this herb or have this essential oil or go out at sunrise with your shirt off and get the red light on your skin because of all the magnificent things it's going to do to you. They will never say that. Go and put your bare feet on the grass because of earthing. They're never going to say that. Never. Because big pharma or big harmer, however you want to call them, they won't allow it because money. There's no incentive like that for functional medicine. Well, some practitioners there is, but for most of us there is not. So that is the general difference between the two. There's just more options over here. And I think to give Western medicine its due, my dad had open heart surgery 2 months ago. If he went to see a functional medicine doctor, I would have instantly pulled him away and said to him, no, you need to go and see a surgeon because you need to have open heart surgery. Now, functional medicine is what allowed me to spot that he needed to go because he had a big ass diagonal crease on his lobe. That's cardiovascular issues straight away. So I did say to him, I was like, mate, you might want to get that looked. Open heart surgery, go and see a heart surgeon. When it comes to those types of things, surgeries, traumatic events, accidents, you got a finger hanging off, need it sewn back on, whatever. Go and see that guy. Go and see that surgeon. Go and see that doctor. If you've got a chronic infection and you need antibiotics straight away, otherwise you are going to die, go and see them. But they are rubbish at disease. There's no way they can sort out autoimmunities. There's no way they can sort out. I mean, how long have they been raging the war on cancer and they're still no closer to it? They just don't. It's disease management. It's not healthcare. It's disease management. Everything else, surgery-wise and stuff like that, that's fine. Go and see them. But Western medicine is the thing that helps you with all the other stuff. Sorry, functional medicine is the thing that helps you with all the other stuff.
You touched on it a bit right there, kind of getting into the root cause approach and also decentralized healthcare, which we could definitely come back to. But yeah, maybe you could explain a bit like what is root cause approach. Obviously, like simply how you explain is like conventional medicine, band-aid, you're just chasing symptoms.
Yeah.
So you touched on it a bit, but maybe we could go a bit more into how the root cause approach plays into functional medicine and what that would look like practically in treating any condition or addressing any times of any kind of dysfunction.
Okay. So I will use an Alzheimer's patient I had. He's 72. He's on Alzheimer's medication. He's on prostate medication. He's on blood thinners. He's on PPIs. And I was like, this is all a bit of a mismatch going on here. I was like, just give me, while I'm doing your blood analysis and all the rest of it, give me your medication. Let me do some correlations going on here because I want to make sure that there's no issues with anything that I give you. I want to make sure that there's no supplements I can't give you because of the medication that you're on and all that type of stuff. So I speak to his daughter because her son was one of my clients at the time. And I said, out of curiosity, I was like, when did your dad start getting Alzheimer's symptoms? And she's like, oh, after his second vaccine. I was like, interesting. I was like, have you heard of vaccine-induced Alzheimer's? No. I was like, well, it will be a thing. I was like, it is coming, which it is now. You can look out now and you can find there's COVID-induced Alzheimer's. There's vaccine-induced Alzheimer's. So I was like, I'm going to treat it as such. So I look into the medication that he's taking. He's on one type of medication for the PPI, right? So high stomach acid, right? He didn't have high stomach acid. Everything in his blood showed me he had low stomach acid, which we know is a common occurrence, right? They mistake the low stomach acid for an esophageal sphincter issue. They think acid's coming up the throat. And there isn't. It's just low stomach acid. So he's on a PPI for that. And one of the side effects of the PPI is it increases your chance of Alzheimer's once you're over the age of 60. I was like, why they put him on this? He's already got bloody Alzheimer's. They're just enhancing it. I was like, that's stupid. Then I looked at the Alzheimer's drugs he's on. Clearly not working. They increase the risk of hip fracture by 74% over the age of 65. Well, if we look into the literature of hip fractures, anybody over the age of 65 that has a hip fracture, the percentage chance of you dying within the next 5 years is like 62%, because you lose mobility, you lose the ability to function, because your hip is a weight-bearing joint, so you can't go out and do anything. So you lose function, and you end up basically losing the will to do anything, and you end up dying. I was like, holy crap. It's like, I need to get this guy off all this stuff, which I did. And he's fine. But I had to delve into the research of it all and find the root causes. So what was the root cause of the Alzheimer's? The vaccine. So we had to do a spike protein detox, which we did. I then had to treat the symptoms of the Alzheimer's: cerebral lysine, Nupept, and dihexa. That helped him with all of that stuff. Then I need to look at the prostate. Well, we just gave him things that helped him calm his prostate down. Apigenin, stinging nettle, all fine. He now doesn't pee in the middle of the night. He can now pee in a stream without it going like a sprinkler. Treated his low stomach acid. Bitter vegetables, Swedish bitters. Betaine HCl, switched it out for some Tudka eventually, because he was having fat digestive issues. Low stomach acid's gone. All right, so root cause. We found the cause of the low stomach acid, treated it, gone. Found the root cause of the prostate, treated it, gone. Found the root cause of the Alzheimer's, treated it, gone. So the first call I had with him, within 10 minutes, he messaged me saying, why did you send, because I sent him my brochure after the call. He said, why did you send me a brochure? I was like, holy shit, he doesn't remember who I am. Last call I had with him, he sat there with his son, who was also a client of mine. We're talking through everything, and his son said something inaccurate. And he turned around and said to him, that's not true. That 2 months ago, that didn't happen. This is what happened. And I was like, oh shit, long-term potentiation, short-term memory into long-term memory, Alzheimer's gone. And I was like, God damn. I was like, mate, you just remembered. He went, oh yeah. I was like, amazing. So by taking the time and treating the system and finding the root causes of each of those things, removing the things that were causing the problem and introducing things that would help in the system, the body rectified itself. Now, what he takes now to keep that stuff up, I don't know, because he's not with me anymore. But to help a 72-year-old man get his memory back and to take it from a root cause approach, that was the only way, because the other way wasn't working. It made no sense to keep going down that route. That's like knowing you're going the wrong way, but because you've been going the wrong way for an hour, you keep driving. You'd be much better off just turning around and going back. Like, that just makes no sense. So yeah, dude, root cause, it's the only way. And the only way that we can do that is by asking better questions and really digging into what people are going through and then joining the dots. We are detectives. And I know that sounds quite, like, you know, we're bigging ourselves up here, you know, like we're not like Dick Tracy or anything like that, but we are literally detectives, because we have to join these unseemingly unconnected dots somehow. And we're doing it with very small bits of information, because we're relying on the client to, one, be honest, and two, remember, which, you know, if we think about it, the reason why witness statements are never used in court that much anymore is because the memory over a certain period of time is unreliable. It makes shit up. It fills the gaps, right? This is why anybody that's ever argued with their missus and then 6 months later she started having to go at you about that same thing again, but this time the story's different. Yeah, because her brain's forgotten half of it and she's filling in the gaps. So she's making that shit up and fully believes it, because to her, that's exactly what happened. But the brain's just making it up. So the root cause is the only real way you're going to get the answer to the question, but you just have to ask better questions. And that, just take the time to go through it. That's it. That is the root cause in a nutshell.
Yeah, I had recently heard a doctor, I think on some content on Instagram, talking about basically the validity of labs and subjective and objective, basically, is what she was getting at. So like, you
Yep.
don't have to trust me. You don't have to trust your doctor. You don't have to trust anyone. You can
No.
trust your labs. And ultimately, how you feel is the subjective, and your labs are to an extent the objective. And you want both of those things to be good or great.
Yep.
And you're good by all accurate measures.
Yep.
So yeah, going back to the decentralized healthcare, because a lot of people I know are definitely not familiar with that. So put simply, kind of, here in the States, a good example is like doctors are obviously, you go to them, you have symptoms, there's different pharmacological medications they're supposed to prescribe you for your symptoms. And if they go too far outside of that, they can risk losing their medical license.
Yep.
I had a guest on the podcast not too long ago who was basically speaking about how California, for example, is one of the most lenient states
Mm-hmm.
on that side of things, but a lot of other ones are much more strict and harsh.
Mm.
So yeah, maybe you could kind of sum up what is kind of future of healthcare looking like, decentralized healthcare. What does that mean exactly?
All right, that's perfect. So since getting into the quantum stuff, I have been calling myself a decentralized health coach, because think of it, for anybody that understands this setup, fiat currency and Bitcoin. That's probably the best way of describing it. Bitcoin isn't tied to the fiat system, which means that no matter what happens to that market, your Bitcoin is your Bitcoin. Like, that is it. And it can be used as legal tender in most places now. It removes a government or a government body. So normally in a centralized, well, I say normally in a centralized system, there is a governing body at the top which controls everything and says, this is this, this is that is that. There's no argument. We make the rules. But as Charlie Munger says, or said before he passed away, incentives dictate outcomes. So the people that are at the top, the government or governing bodies of these centralized systems, which is basically the whole of the Western world, is a whole centralized system, they are the ones who dictate what happens. We have no freedom. Freedom is an illusion in a centralized system. So, as an example, you go to a doctor, you have high blood sugar, your HbA1c is high, your insulin's high, your glucose high, you're pre-diabetic, diabetic, metformin. Once you start taking metformin, you're in the silo now, right? And a silo is literally just like a tunnel. You can only go one way. You can't turn around and go back. You're going in this direction. It's like cattle herding, basically. And obviously, once you're in there and you're taking metformin, well, now you have to take something else to manage the side effects of metformin, because it's a one compoundal thing with multiple compoundal effects. And now you need to take another product, another prescription drug to manage the side effects of the other one, that manage the side effects of that one, and so on and so on. You watching yourself, watching yourself, watching yourself, watching yourself, right? It just goes on. Decentralized healthcare is me saying to you, I'll be like, right, okay, Nus, what we're going to do is we're going to make you the CEO of your own health. I'm not just going to sit here and peddle supplements to you and say to you, just take these for the rest of your life, because I'm just lobotomizing your wallet every single month. What I'm going to do is I'm going to educate you. And as Simon Sinek would say, start with why. Why are we doing these things? Well, we're doing these things because of X, Y, and Z. Because once you understand the why, therein lies the value. And once you understand the value, you will do it. So I can tell you a million things to do which are free, which will fix your health to a certain level. And then on top of that, I'll layer in some other things, like a couple of supplements maybe, which you need because of deficiencies or what have you. Then I'll layer in maybe some peptides and say, right, we need a couple of this as well, just to boost you up a little bit. But I'm going to educate you as we go. I'm going to teach you as we go. And by doing this, I'm giving you the reins. I'm saying to you, here, this is your health. You do it as you wish. This is my recommendation. And once you finish working with me, the whole point then is that you have basically downloaded my brain and you now know what to do yourself. So you do not need me. Therein lies the point. You don't need to have me in your corner all the time. I can just give you what I know, and you are now the owner of your own health. You don't need to be governed by anybody. You don't have to be on a million prescriptive drugs. You can live where you want, and you know how to adapt. You can live in a northern hemisphere. You can live in a southern hemisphere. You can live at a 32nd degree latitude. You can live at a 52nd degree latitude. You can live nearer the equator, nearer the poles. You'll know how to adapt. So decentralized healthcare is basically giving you the tools to be an adaptive machine, because we grew up in nature. We grew up outside. We grew up with all the necessary things that we needed. And it's our lifestyle, this centralized, dictated lifestyle, that is making us sick. It's not difficult to see. Since like the late 1890s, when all of this started to change, that's when it all started going wrong. You know, autism didn't enter into the medical records until like 1920. So before then, there was no word for it. So what changed? Well, centralized medicine came in, right? Centralized lifestyle came in, light bulbs, alternating current power grids. You know, there was that whole argument between Tesla and Edison. Edison wanted the DC power grid and Tesla wanted the AC. And unfortunately, Tesla won. Centralized gives you this one way of looking at things and one way only. And if it's our way or the highway, decentralizer says to you, right, let's find a way and let's make it your way and let's make you free. And then you don't need anything else. You can basically just live anywhere you want and be anything you want to be and have the freedom to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want, as often as you want. And that's it.
It's interesting because now in the modern day, obviously, nature things were much more simple, but now we have to deploy all these fancy tools to get back towards nature and optimize the dysfunctions that we have because of modern day living. So obviously that's where things like functional labs come in, root cause approach, all that kind of stuff. So
100%.
maybe just for, again, people who are not so familiar with functional lab testing, you kind of touched on obviously what it is in the sense of blood work. But maybe we could just go through like what exactly is it generally, functional blood work, functional labs. Why would someone use these tools, and how could they get started in working on this kind of stuff, whether they have symptoms, they have some issues, they have some conditions, or they're just looking to optimize their health?
I love this question. Such a great question. So functional labs, if we use blood work initially, that's generally the starting point with most people, for me, because it gives us a snapshot in time of cellularly what's going on. Now, it's not a complete picture by any means. And we had this discussion yesterday that it's not the be all and end all. There are other tests that you can do to garner as much information as you possibly want. Like if money's not an issue, there are loads of tests that you can do. Are they all necessary? No, of course they're not. If you've not got gut issues, you don't need to do a GI map test. Simple. If you don't have hormone issues, you don't need to do a Dutch test. The thing is most people have all of these problems. So GI map's like 350 quid. Dutch test is like 350 quid. Total tox test like 480 quid. Like they're all a lot of money, or dollars, whichever like currency you want to use it. So what's the quickest route of entry? Bloods, because they're cheaper and they're very broad. As you know from studying blood work and doing functional blood work, there is not much that you can't see correlatively in bloods outside of a certain things. Like as we were saying yesterday, you can't look at a blood test and be like, oh, negative gram bacteria and specifically Klebsiella. You can't do that. Like, and if you can, and I just don't know how to, you can't do it with such pinpoint accuracy that you know exactly how much.
You might be a wizard.
Maybe there could be somebody out there that is an absolute blood wizard who could do that, and I just never met them and I don't know how. If you are listening to this podcast, please reach out, teach me. But I'm always going to be there with the beginner's mind. I'm never going to go in as admitting that I think I know everything, because I don't. It's that whole Socrates paradox of the one thing I know is I know nothing. I'm very humble like that, and I'm very happy to be schooled by somebody, because schooled just means that I'm learning, which is great. But there are limitations to blood work. There's only so much you can do. But from a from a big net to catch as much fish as you possibly can, it's a great start. So we can see about stomach stuff. We can see about hormone stuff. We can, even in that, I can see things about blue light exposure. I can see things about mitochondrial health. I can see things about non-native EMF exposure. These things are easy to see once you know the patterns to see them. But let's just say I see signs of mold toxicity, potential mold toxicity in the bloods. Well, my next step then is to thinking, okay, well, what tests can I use? Which is going to give us a little bit more of a clue, because maybe they didn't follow the guidelines I gave them to do the bloods. Maybe these signs of microtoxicity that I'm seeing have come from the fact that they had a sauna the day before. And so their detox pathways were all lit up. And so stuff was moving around the body, and that's been picked up in the bloods per se. I don't know. Well, I'll do a VCS test, a visual contrast sensitivity test. It's like $12. That's about 93% accurate. It's based off Dr. Shoemaker's work. That will say to you, okay, maybe mold or biotoxins or parasite or long COVID or something like that. Okay, great. So if it comes up as long COVID, I don't have to do a toxicity test. But if it comes up as mold or a biotoxin or a mycotoxin, I'm like, right, okay, cool. So now we'll do a total tox test. This warrants the £400 to do it, because I don't know specifically what is happening. It could be metals. I don't know. We just need to know what it is, and that way then I know how to address it. So the bloods is the entry point to knowing what else might need to be done. Not what has to be done, but what might need to be done. Now, 7 out of 10 people don't need any more than the bloods. They generally don't. But then the ones that do, that's when I'll recommend, okay, maybe we do this or maybe do that. Like if somebody comes to me and had a client that came to me, had all the signs of IBD. And so I said to him, look, 2 things that you need to have a look at getting done. Hey, balloons, cow protecting test. I wonder what was going on there. Cow protecting test and a colonoscopy. I'm not recommending them to you. I'm suggesting quite highly that you should get these done. He bypassed the cow protecting test and went straight for the colonoscopy, came back confirmed colitis. He's like, how did you know that? I'm like, well, I could see it in the bloods. His neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio was 1:1. That's either immune dysregulation or autoimmune. Plus he had other signs of autoimmune. So I was like, right, he's got autoimmune here. I'm pretty much going to like bet my business on this. And I'm glad I did, because he went and got the necessary tests done. So as I say, 7 out of 10 times, they're not going to need to go much further than a blood test. But as an entry level point to get a 80%, 90% kind of accurate look at your body as to what's going on, you're not going to get better than a blood test, because it's cheap. It's accurate because of the fact that it's all done by private labs and they're all stringently tested. How good the results are is based on how well you prep for it yourself personally as a client. Like if your practitioner says to you, don't train 3 days before, don't take supplements 3 days before, don't do anything stressful 3 days before, get it done in the morning, make sure you're hydrated, don't drink caffeine, do it fasted, then do those things, because every single one of those things will mess up the bloods. And now you're wasting your money and your practitioner's time. But do all those things right. If you've picked a good practitioner who's good at reading bloods, then you're going to get a pretty accurate result. And then you're going to know what to do going forward and what other tests are needed. Because there, as I say, there are, as you know, there are mountains of tests. Cyrex, I mean, Cyrex alone have got like 50 different panels. Then you've got GI Map, then you've got Vibrant Wellness that do all these other kind of tests. And you've got oats tests and genetic tests. And oh God, the list is just like, there's just so many. And unfortunately, wrong doing practitioners who earn commission from those tests or can charge up those tests put a lot of us to shame, because you'll get a lot of people going, oh, I went to a functional map practitioner and I ended up spending, like some woman I was listening to the other day, she spent 125 grand on tests and was no further forward than what she was before she got them done.
Wow.
That practitioner is like, yes, please. Because I guarantee you they weren't 125 grand to get them done. They probably cost maybe 80. So this practitioner's got a nice profit off that. That's wrong. You don't need to do them if you don't need to do them. Like testing is just another thing that you can use. It doesn't have to be that way. If you get somebody that knows what they're doing, they'll try and minimize the cost, not extrapolate it out, you know? So most people nowadays have something that their GP, their doctor said to them, I don't know, what do you think we should do? I've actually had a client have that from their GP. I don't know, what do you think we should do? Well, then that's when they come and find somebody like me and you, because we're like, okay, cool. We'll just get it all done again. We're going to start from the beginning. We'll get your bloods done, and we're going to build it from there. Most people have something wrong that they don't know why, or unconnected symptoms that they can't figure out. Get your bloods done. Find out what the root causes are, because there might be more than one root cause. There might be a couple, and then you deal with each one in turn. Take your time. And just something which got commented to me the other day. Started taking that supplement. It's like, okay, cool. How are you feeling? Yeah, I don't feel anything. Well, how long have you been taking it for? 3 days. 3 days. Yeah. And you're expecting what? Flying unicorns? I was like, it's 3 days. I said, do you take vitamin D? He's like, well, you know I do. I was like, right. And do you feel it? Do you feel it? No. So you don't feel like sunshine? No. Right. Well, then you don't question that, do you? Like, you shouldn't expect to feel something instantaneously. This shit takes time. Like, if you're 30 odd years old, you've got 30 years of really bad habits and really poor lifestyle choices that have led you to this point where you're seeking some help. Your practitioner isn't there with his Harry Potter wand, expelliarmusing away all your problems. Leviosa, and it all lifts away. Like, no. It's going to have to be unpacked, and it's going to have to take time. If you've got liver issues, thyroid issues, gut issues, brain fog, libido issues, yeah, if you want to spend $8,000 in a month on supplements and peptides, I can probably get it all sorted for you. But that's going to be really complicated, because I'm going to have to say to you, you're going to have to take a month off work. And from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, you're going to be taking peptides, going outside in the sun, taking supplements, going back outside in the sun, taking more supplements, taking more peptides. You're going to have no time for anything else. So you have to deal with each one in turn and realize that this is a process of an investment into your health. There is no one thing that you're going to take and you're all of a sudden going to feel amazing. It doesn't work that way. The body is a complex thing. And anybody that tells you they understand the body is a liar, because we don't. We know more about space than we do about the brain. We're only just starting to find out the complexities of the mitochondria and the quantum level of the body, light, water, and magnetism, and all this stuff. It's really complicated, bro. You know it is. It's so complicated. So just take your time. There is no rush. You're better off starting now and being better in 6 months to a year's time than going, oh, it's not worth it because it's going to be expensive and I want it now. Well, then stay as you are then, because you're not going to get an answer in a day, and you're not going to feel it within an hour, and you're not going to be better within a week. It's going to take time, but start. That's all you need to do. Find me or Anush or someone else, get your bloods done, start. And you'll start feeling better day by day, bit by bit, moment by moment. And eventually within a year time, because that year's going to go whether you do it or not, you'll look back and you'll be really, really fucking pleased that you did. Because you're not going to be where you were. You're going to be further forward and feeling better. So just start. Just get it done.
That transitions perfectly in what I was going to say next, which is like exactly what would your recommendation be to someone, which you just said. And it's like the more you learn, the more nuance you have to entertain. And that's why like people come to anyone, doctors, practitioners in the health space, and asking very specific question, but it's like entertaining more nuance, your advice has to become more and more general. So it's like the simplest thing you can tell someone for everything is just like find a practitioner who you trust, who checks off the boxes and can help you, and is somewhat of a generalist to where you don't have to go to 10 different specialists. They can take care of many things under one roof and start working on those things. Because like a lot of people are kind of disappointed. It's like, oh, like what's the one supplement? What are you taking? What do I need to do? What's the peptide right now?
Yeah,
Peptides are becoming popular. That's what I want to get into next. But like it's hard to give accurate advice generally, especially when you don't know someone's situation. So it's like exactly what you said, hit the nail on the head. Find someone you trust who can do many things, generalist, and get started. Take that first step and go from there.
exactly. You have to start somewhere. And the best time to start was probably 20 years ago. And the second best time is now. So just start. Because the question I'd say to people, when was the last time you felt normal? When was the last time you weren't tired? When was the last time you didn't have brain fog? When was the last time you woke up as a man? When was the last time you woke up with an erection every morning, as you should do? Like, these things are normal. The way that you're feeling, bloating, not normal. Loads of gas, not normal. Constipation, not normal. Going to the toilet once a week, 2 times a week, not normal. Not being able to finish your workout, not normal. Not going outside, not normal. Not going out for walks and doing 2,000 steps a day, not normal. We are outdoor mammals living in an indoor existence. This needs to stop. So you can think of it like this: pleasure now, pain later. Or pain now, pleasure later. Other words, easy life now, hard life later. Hard life now, easy life later. I, like you, would rather do the work now, front load it, so that way then the rest of my life is a breeze, then keep starting and stopping, should I, shouldn't I, won't, I will, I won't, I will, donuts, pizzas, bad decisions. Oh, now I'm overweight and I'm now 10 years older and it's even fucking harder. Like, to start, just do it. It's going to cost you anyway. And if you find it difficult to figure out and justify the cost, there's a great book called The Automatic Millionaire. And in that book, he talks about something called the latte factor. Everybody buys a latte every day. They're like $5. 7 days a week, it's $35. Times by 4, times by 8. There's your bloods. Just don't drink your latte for 2 months. Don't go out on the weekend and blow $200, £200 on food and beer. Now you've got your bloods. So what's that down to? Choice. And what's that down to? Priorities. If you want it, you'll do it. If you don't, you'll make reasons. And as Les Brown would say, you can have reasons or results, but not both.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people aren't used to investing in their health, right? And that's the area where even the smallest investment feels like not just, when it's like what area is more worth it to invest in. And you see people reverse side who get severe health issues and they're forced to invest in it, and maybe they have to go, into debt. But at that point, they're that person themselves would tell you it was worth it. What's the alternative, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, you can use Steve Jobs as an example. Absolute minted man, billionaire, dies of prostate cancer. I would say that wasn't very successful, personally. You're doing all the things that drove it that direction. The reason why what I am working on right now, which is a laptop, is called a laptop, is because he called it a laptop, because where did he put it? On his bloody lap. And where's the prostate? By his lap. Where did he used to keep his phone? In those worn out jeans that he always used to wear, in his pocket, near his prostate. So he made poor life choices, suffered the consequences. I'm sure if he had the opportunity at his sickest moment that he could go back in time and undo the stupid decisions he made so that he could live, he would. So money will come and money will go. But once health goes, that's really hard to get back without paying for it, because you're going to need help. And whether you have private healthcare or you don't, it's still going to cost you. But it will cost you in time. The sooner you catch something, the sooner it can be fixed or healed or recovered from. or reduced. But the longer you leave it, the harder it is to do, because being a stone overweight is far easier than being 10 stone overweight than being 20 stone overweight. And this comes down to this thing that I said to a client before. I was like, choosing to work on yourself is hard. Choosing to go to the gym is hard. Choosing to get up every morning and go for a walk before work is hard. Sitting on the sofa and eating and getting overweight is hard. Not going to the gym is hard. It's all hard. You just have to choose your hard. So just make better choices, really, because what you do today determines tomorrow. You know, so if you want to be a different person in 10 days' time, start now. And then you will be. Don't wait for 10 days and hope that miraculously something's going to change, because it won't. You have to do it. And that's the reason why you're where you are and why I am where I am, because I chose to do the work. I'm not saying this to impress any. I'm going to steal a Tony Robbins quote here. I'm not saying this to impress anybody. I'm saying it to impress upon them that it all comes down to choice.
And I think that's something that, like, people think like, oh, well, I don't have any severe symptoms. And with health, it's like, unless we're forced to a lot of the time, human condition, we don't give it the attention it needs.
No.
But it's like people think, oh, because they don't have any severe symptoms or anything, they can just cruise and keep doing what they're doing. But it's like in this day and age, especially people like us who have been on the other side of things, you know, dealing with severe health challenges, it's like, you know, the value of optimizing and preventing and making sure you're in a good place. And everyone thinks it's harder, as everything is harder in the beginning, but once it becomes your lifestyle, once it becomes your norm, a lot of that hard becomes easy, right? Like eating properly, proper nutrition, lifestyle, it just becomes second nature to you, like anything else. Like on the other side, someone sitting on the couch and eating junk food is, it becomes second nature, it becomes easy. So might as well work on implementing that and making that your norm. And then it's just maintenance. You don't have to go into that aggressive building mode, building new habits, making implementations.
Exactly. The person who enjoys walking will go a lot further than the one who loves the destination.
Yeah.
Right.
So then once you get to the destination, you're not going to want to walk anymore.
Exactly. Right? You're going to be there, right? So once you reach that point, you're already there, right? So you better start. You know, start.
That makes me think of like fat loss.
Right? Was that again, bro?
Yeah. That makes me think of like fat loss, right? Because it's like that, even in fat loss coaching and that side of the world, it's like the goal is this 30 pounds. So that's always the North Star that you're going towards. And then once you check that box off, it's like, oh, you reached the destination now. You're not going to want to keep walking, because the walking was only motivated to get to that destination, which was a very short-term goal and short-term destination. So what happens after that?
Yep. No one ever thinks about that. No one thinks about that, about the sustainability of the journey. No one thinks about that. There is at no point on this journey of life where the journey stops. The only time we reach balance, equilibrium, is death. That is it. And as Tate says, the moment you are gifted life, you're guaranteed death, and what you do in between is up to you. So there is always a journey. It never stops. It is perpetual, ongoing. And so why not make it a journey of progression? Why not make it a journey of betterment? Why not make it a journey of growth? Then constantly turning against the tide and trying to walk upstream. I would rather below the bear it and just lay on my back and let the river take me, because at least that way then I'm going in the right direction, because it's taking me where I need to be. It's much harder to turn against the tide and walk, or try and push against it. Why? Like, just go where you're meant to be going, adjust your sails for the winds of the day, as Aristotle would say, and then just do what needs to be done. You know, there's no, what was it that Marcus Aurelius said? It's like the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way, right? The obstacle is the way. The hard thing that you're avoiding, that's the thing. Do the thing, right? I can keep quoting things. The only way forward is through, right? Just go. You know, I just want to wind people up and just say, like, right, go. Just go and do what you need to do, because it's going to happen regardless. So you may as well just do it with good grace and good gratitude and off your own volition than to be forced and kicking and screaming into it.
Yeah. The time is going to pass either way. You might as well allow it
There
to
you go.
serve you.
There you go. Because no one is coming to save you. No one. You'll have people there as guides that will help you, but ultimately no one is coming to save you because everybody is on their own journey. Everybody is concerned about themselves. Everybody at some level is a deep narcissist because they are solely thinking about themselves. That's just the way that life is. Like, we can't help that. But there will be people that will help you, but ultimately no one is going to want to come and save you. No one's going to save you over themselves. Do the work. The magic is in the work that you're not doing.
Yeah, so that's one I heard recently that definitely hits hard. I think that's a great point to kind of wrap things up on. Powerful stuff. One last thing I kind of wanted to touch on that we spoke about a bit, but um, gaining a lot of popularity recently. Some people are hearing about it, some people haven't heard about it, but I think it would be good for them to hear from you. Peptides. What exactly are peptides? I know some people get the explanation sequence of amino acids, but what actually are peptides practically? What's the utility of them? When should someone explore them or consider them?
Cool. Great question. All right, we'll wrap up on this one then. So, as you said, peptides are chains of amino acids with peptide bonds at the end. Anything that's 100 anything that's 100 amino acids or more is a protein. Anything that's about 49 or less is a peptide. And the lower down the chain you go, the less complex they become. So they become like 2-chain, 3-chain, and what have you. You've got two types of peptides. You've got signaling and you've got tissue specific. The signaling ones, they work through DNA, RNA, mRNA kind of signaling through the body. There are things like BBC 157, TB500, GHK, ipamorelin, CJC. The one that everybody now knows as Ozempic or Wegovy, which is actually semaglutide. I just want to highlight here, just as a segue, the reason why people get side effects from Ozempic and Wegovy and Trulicity and these other ones from these other companies is because they cannot patent a peptide because peptides are naturally occurring. Semaglutide is a naturally occurring thing inside the body because we have GLP-1 agonists in the body. They cannot patent a biological thing. The only way they can patent it is by two ways: introducing something into the mix, adding something, and the delivery mechanism. They did both. They did the delivery system for Ozempic and Wegovy, and they added something into the blend. It's not a straight up peptide. There is an extra ingredient. That extra ingredient plus the ridiculously stupid levels that they start people on is the reason why people are having side effects and the reason why it stops working. Doctors will say to them, take this, you can keep eating the way that you're eating and you'll just lose weight. So people are like, oh, great, I can keep eating KFC and donuts and I'm just going to lose weight. Well, yeah, you will. But then when you stop taking it, your bad habit is still going to continue and you're going to put it all back on again. It's not a quick fix, which is what people want. It's not a magic bullet, so to speak. Take semaglutide on its own, not the pharmaceutical version. One is so much cheaper, so much cheaper. Like, as an example, in the UK, it's like $800, I think it is, for the Ozempic from the doctor. It's like $100 from a peptide supplier. Right?
That would be for like a month's supply too, right?
Yeah, that's for a month. So when people are like, oh, they're not doing it for money. Oh, no, of course not. Of course not. They just do it out of the goodness of their heart. But so yeah, so these peptides, the signaling ones, these are the ones that are the most available. These are the ones that are on the kind of the up and up. People that they're becoming more common now. So when do you use them? How do you use them? Why do you use them? You can use them in high doses or you can use them in small doses and microdose them. Over time, I have become more favored to microdosing them over a longer period of time than to bolus dose them over a shorter period of time. But it depends on the person. So if somebody, okay, let's just say I had an athlete come up to me in the gym the other day. I've got this going on with my ankle. It will not heal. What should I do? And I was like, right, take this and take this. Inject it here in this dose reconstitute it. So you have to make it yourself, because it's not going to come from a compounding pharmacy. It's not going to come ready-made like a cerebral lysine would. It's going to come in a powder, lipolyzed form. You're going to have to add some bacteriostatic water or reconstitution water to it. How much you add depends on the doses that you're going to get out of it. So most times you add like 2 to 3 milliliters, and the higher the concentration, in a sense of like how much you're going to use. If we use TB500 as an example, you can dose TB500 500 micrograms every day, which with 2 mils of water would be like this much of an injection. Or you can do it as 1.5 milligrams every 3 days. With 2 mils of water, it'll be like this much. Well, probably more like that much. So that's a lot more. So it just depends on how often you want to pin yourself with an insulin needle and how much you want to push into your body in one go. For this particular individual, I went with a higher dose because we needed a very quick turnaround. So I said to him, for the first 20 days, do it like this. And then for the next 20 days, do it like this. And that's what he's going to do. And already he's messaged me going, dude, I can actually like run on it. I'm like, yeah. That doesn't surprise me because I know that. But to him, he's like, holy shit, like literally like healed me. I'm like, yeah, it will do. Like, I've healed fractured ribs, which should take 12 weeks. I've healed it in 3 because it's just ramped up my body's ability to do it. And that's all it's doing, is it's going in and it knows what to do. It's sending the signal. Like BPC 157 is made in the body. TB500 is an extract of thymus, and that's the immune modulator. So anything where the immune system's involved, where you've got cytokines and mast cells, which happens in injuries and ligament tears and stuff like that, you send in the helper agent, and all of a sudden it's going to go in and go, right, everyone to the side, charged, clear. It's going to know what to do. And it controls the movements of everything. So it's like an orchestra, a conductor of the orchestra, so to speak. So that's kind of how you can use them. Why you would use them can be very broad. So if we use GHK-Cu as an example, that's a copper peptide. It's very, very good for collagen production and stuff like that in the skin. So it's widely used in anti-aging creams because it will reduce fine lines and wrinkles. It will increase collagen synthesis in the skin, makes you look like Benjamin Button. Basically, you start looking younger, which is great. So it's got incredible regenerative properties there. But that's if it's topically applied. If you inject it, it's got incredible regenerative properties in the body. It modulates the immune system. It helps with intestinal stem cell growth or proliferation. So if you've got anybody that's got IBD or intestinal issues, you can use it there. It regenerates the lungs. It helps with, oh God, so many things. Like, I think it helps with like over 200 to 300 like complexes within the body. So it's got multiple uses. Just depends on how. KPV is the same. It's known as the anti-candida peptide. You can use it for gut repair. You can use it for inflammatory control. You can use it for psoriasis, eczema, any topical skin issue, burns, wounds. You just apply it topically in a cream, and within 48 hours, it's just starting to reduce the scarring. It's starting to reduce everything. Like it's incredible. So they've all got multi-compoundal things. Like BPC is used for gut health, but it's also really good for neurological stuff if you spray it up your nose. It's also really good for angiogenesis, which is the formation and creation of new blood cells. New blood vessels. So they have multiple applications. And when you want to start using them and how you use them is just going to be dependent on what's going on. But there's something I just want to highlight here. Like, I learn peptides and still am learning peptide therapy from Dr. William Seeds. He's one of the leading peptide therapists in the world. Now, how I used to take them back in the day in like 2017, 2018, compared to how I take them now, totally different. Back then, I was following, I don't know, Steve's advice from Austin, Texas on Reddit. Well, he didn't know. He was just making it up as he went. So I just went on Reddit and was like, how do you take this peptide? Yeah, do it like this, like the good old days with steroids and stuff. Just some dude called, like, do you remember like dog crap training? I don't know if you ever heard of that, but it was just a guy on a forum whose forum name was dog crap, and he came up with a really cool way of training, and it became known as the DC training methodology. Sorry. That's how I used to find out peptide stuff, was just go on Reddit and find some random forum and just follow it. Well, now I know what to do with it. I know that was very, very wrong. And I'm lucky that I didn't hurt myself. So, and again, I'll use a client as an example. I gave him a protocol to do. And he messaged me saying, why am I taking this much TB500 and this much BPC? My mate is doing it like this. And I was like, so where did your mate learn this? Well, I think he Googled it. I was like, oh, so he's a Google MD. What? I was like, yeah, that's not a thing. I was like, so you're asking somebody that's studying peptide therapy with one of the world's leading peptide therapists why I've given you it this way, where your mate who read it on Google from some dude is doing it like this. I was like, I tell you what, do it like your mate. And then when you get into trouble, don't call me. I was like, because I'm not going to help you, because I've told you what to do. And I've done it this particular way because your bloods showed me this. This other test showed me this. So this is why we're doing this. Yeah, I think I'm going to do it like my mate. 2 weeks later, I think I made a mistake. Really? Really? You reckon? What's happened? Have you grown a third testicle? I told you not to do it that way. Every time I'm injecting, I'm getting increased heart rate and my face is flushing. Yeah, I know. I could have told you that was going to happen, but sometimes you've got to learn from experience. And I knew you wouldn't kill yourself, but I just thought I'd let you do it anyway. Your mate was a fool. So my point is, don't just read a Reddit forum. Speak to somebody that knows what they're talking about and get some advice before you start injecting yourself with anything. And cheap peptides are cheap for a reason. No disrespect from stuff that comes from China, but do not take peptides that come from China. They come laced with LPS, which are lipopolysaccharides. This causes endotoxemia in the body. That is not a fun thing to have. It's very, very dangerous. Lipopolysaccharides are things that are released by bacteria as toxins. It causes chronic inflammation in the body. Do not get them from there because they do not test them. You need to get them from a lab or a site that has the purity rating certificate, third-party tested, up to date on the site. If it says 2024, purity test 98%. If it says 2020 purity test 98%, don't buy it. It's 4 years out of date. Right? You wouldn't eat food 4 years out of date. Don't inject yourself with something that's 4 years out of date. Not fun.
Yeah. And I think one important disclaimer, which you kind of already touched on, is like they're getting this rap as like almost like a magic bullet, which they are obviously very powerful compounds, but it's not like you're just going to pick a peptide and take it and it's going to fix all your problems. Like with everything, like you said, there's no one magic supplement. There's no one magic compound. You need everything, multimodal approach, lifestyle, foundations, and holistic, as everything in the body is connected, interconnected system. So yeah, I think we can wrap up on that note. Very valuable conversation, Mark. Again, thanks for coming on.
Brother, my pleasure. Thank you for having me and allowing me to educate your audience and to add value in some way. I hope I have. So thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, brother.